Hey everyone, Jeff here, also known as the Revit Kid. Welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. Thank you for joining me on this special Tuesday episode. Usually this show is a weekly live stream on Thursday afternoon or Thursday nights. This is episode 34, I believe. Started over 8 months ago, so thank you for joining me. If it's your first time here, this is a weekly live stream where we talk about Autodesk Revit or really any adjacent / related software to BIM and the architecture, engineering, construction industry in general. So thanks again for joining. This is awesome. This is a special Tuesday episode because for those of you who are from the United States, you know that this is Thanksgiving week. So this Thursday is Thanksgiving. So I know it's going to look a little different this year probably for most, as it will for me with COVID and much smaller groups. But hopefully you still get to enjoy some family, some turkey, or whatever you like to cook on Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us live. This is a live stream, so I encourage you, and I will continue to encourage you to ask questions and chat throughout this entire stream. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. Hey, Sean, welcome, man. Sean Burke, great to see you, buddy. We got Rich Spencer here, Chris from New Zealand, awesome dude. Although Chris, I guess, may be having a larger Thanksgiving this year. I don't know. I know New Zealand did a pretty good job at getting rid of that pesky COVID that we have not. Jeff from UK is here. What's up, man? Says Jack Bauer says you can mute your phone. Yes, thank you. I do have the 24 ringtone. If you guys don't know the show 24, that's what he's referring to. But today we have a really cool topic. I've done a couple episodes and sessions on Twinmotion, specifically Twinmotion 2020 this year. And if you want to check those out, just head over to live.bimafterdark.com and you'll be able to see any previous episodes. I'll also post any links to related episodes in the description here on YouTube as well as on the blog post. The other thing is, if you are a new viewer, or maybe you're just by the luck of the draw you landed here, make sure you subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, and you'll know about when I go live. If you hit the notification bell, it'll let you know when I'm live, but it'll also let you know when I post videos and other tutorials, which I do post on the channel. Or you can head over to therevitkid.com or bimafterdark.com. Either one. Sign up for my mailing list or any of the free resources, and you'll be notified. We got Ibrahim from Cleveland, Ohio. What's up, dude? Belgium. Man, we got people from all over the place. So cool. So cool. Brody Scott's here again. Brody, nice to see you. Making fun of my Trello board on the wall. That is by design. It is very similar to Trello. It's actually my own personal pull planning for anyone who's familiar with lean processes, but super helpful, especially for someone like myself who has a million things going on. So anyways, we're going to be talking about Twinmotion and specifically night rendering. So one of the things that I noticed as I was sort of learning Twinmotion and then teaching others is that there's not a lot of content about creating night renderings, and they can also be a little tricky when you're coming from Revit into Twinmotion for night renderings. And honestly, the same kind of goes for Lumion too. So the processes and some of the tips actually are very similar for both. So hopefully this will help on either way, on either side of it. But it was really inspired by one of my students who I taught Twinmotion. She is using it for a studio project, and she said, hey, I'm having trouble getting a night scene to look the way I want. So that's what we're going to run through. And before we jump into the actual content, I do want to mention the sponsor of the show and give a little shout out and some awesome information to a deal that they're offering for you. So first, let me just run the video, check it out. Here's the sponsor for the Revit Kid / BIM After Dark Live. So there you have it, BIMbox. For those of you who don't know what BIMbox is, BIMbox USA is a company that makes desktops and laptops that have been specifically designed and optimized for Revit. So I've been testing these machines out and using these machines for well over 8 or 9 months now. I am proud to say that they are a sponsor of this show, and I hope you guys can check them out too. A couple great things. Again, they're optimized and designed for Revit. I've tested lots and lots of different Revit models, as well as even Twinmotion scenes on not just the desktop that's behind me, which you'll see in a second, but also on the laptops. So one thing that they did want to offer all of you here that are viewers to this here show is they're going to be offering $500 off any desktop from now into the end of the year, as long as you tell them that Jeff sent you from the show, or you saw it here on BIM After Dark Live. So in order to take advantage of that, or just get a sense of what it is that BIMBox has to offer, head over to bimbox.bimafterdark.com, or shoot an email to sales@bimboxusa.com, and Buck and his team will hook you up. Great people. A couple things to know about BIMBox. They any size order they can deliver in 10 to 14 days. I've seen pictures and videos of the facility. It's phenomenal. 20, 40, 30, 60, however many laptops or desktops you need, they can deliver them in 10 to 14 days. They all come with a 3-year warranty. By default, that's what you get. Awesome service, great people, and great companies. So check them out. Again, they're offering $500 off BIM After Dark Live viewers for the rest of the year. So make sure you take advantage of that and check it out. As you can see, that's actually one of the BIM boxes back there. Freaking awesome desktop. So cool. Okay. So thank you, BIMBox. Now let's jump into the content. Twinmotion. So Twinmotion is just one of those programs that if you've watched any of the previous episodes I've done about it, it's extremely powerful, but it's got a little funky things to know about it. And night renderings are one of those things where you just kind of have to know some little tips and tricks to get something looking the way you want it. So I'm hoping that what I show you today will at least give you a starting point to making night scenes that make sense for you. The other thing I do want to mention, and this is with anything where I do rendering and presentation skills or techniques, is obviously renderings are very artistic, right? And they're going to be extremely personal. So my style may not be your style, but I'm hoping at least the techniques can help you develop and create and show, whatever style or however you want to show your renderings. So with all that being said, let's jump into some content here, and I'll start talking about the other thing too. Is the progress that, or the project that I'm going to be showing you today is actually going to be my personal house. And anyone, oh geez, snipping just opened. Look at that. That's bizarre. So anyone who has been following along, maybe from the very beginning, you'll know that I'm in the process of, in Camtasia. Wow, a bunch of things just open on my machine. That is bizarre. I also need to post to Twitter right now, right, guys? I mean, if you guys are on Twitter, make sure you follow me at the Revit Kid, and tweet at me, because I do love a good old tweet conversation. Anyways, so as I was saying, this is my personal house, and anyone who anyone who has been following along knows that I've been designing and managing the construction of an addition to my house. And so just a little update on that. I think the last time I did a session with you guys about this, I was doing some Power BI stuff. So again, check that out at live.bimafterdark.com. And we're going through estimating and takeoffs and getting some stuff ready to roll. So now we're actually in the process, pretty much completed with bidding, almost wrapped up closing with the financial side of it, and just pulled together all the permit documentations. Actually, don't know if you can see them, but on the back there's some permit drawings for that. So that's where the house is at. And I'm using this example model because it's one that you've already seen, but it's also a cool example to give you. Raj just asked a quick question before I even jump into it. Thank you, Raj. Is FBX file better than OBJ for Twinmotion? Yes, it is. FBX tends to come in better if you're coming from Revit. I'm assuming the FBX exporter is actually really good from Revit. So I would 100% suggest that. If you are coming from any other program other than Revit, and you only have an OBJ, it will work. But I think, sorry, my computer is freaking out on you guys. I'm glad you don't see what's happening, but like a whole bunch of stuff is happening in the background here. Okay. So yeah. So as I was saying before, I apologize. FBX is definitely seems to come in better. Amandu from Paris. What's up, dude? Amando. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. All right, sweet. And Maisie's super pumped. Maisie, hey. I know you're super pumped about this. So check it out. Here's the house. All right. So if you're interested in this actual scene and how to set up a Twinmotion scene from scratch, I actually have quite a few videos on that. And if you actually want to learn Twinmotion, head over to the Twinmotion Kid. So thetwinmotionkid.com, and you can sign up for a free course that I created, pulled out from my community of courses that walks you through getting started in Twinmotion. But there's also a live session as well where I took a reader's model and I created it. All right, so night scenes. Let's run through this. So here's the Twinmotion scene. I'm just gonna spin around so you get a sense of what the project is. You could see the black box sort of gabled end is actually the addition. I'm gonna try and make sure it's a little slower moving around so you guys don't freak out. And the deck as well as an addition. And if I zoom around, you can see in here there's a dining room. Down here is actually an office, and that's just sort of that's the extent of it. So not a huge project, but I think it's a good one to use as an example. If I zoom out just to show you guys a little bit more about the scene, let me zoom out here. I'll zoom up a little bit. You'll see it's pretty simple. There's a backyard. There's a bunch of trees around. There's some trees in the background. Not much else going on. There's a skybox that's showing it, but that's about it. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Twinmotion scene. So let's talk night stuff now. All right. So the thing with night renderings, when it comes to using another program. So if you're familiar with rendering within Revit or even within Enscape, you're taking your Revit lights and they have IES or some sort of light file and they're producing light, and it's usually a matter of balancing the intensity of those lights, which ones are on, which ones are off, the color of them, etc. When you're coming out via FBX or another program or another export like a collada file into another program such as Twinmotion or Lumion, you have a couple options. Some of them will pull the IES files and some of the lighting files. A lot of them will not. Personally, when it comes to these programs, I'm actually okay with the fact that you have to kind of rebuild your lighting. I know for some people this may not be the best, and I'll show you some options for automatically doing that. But placing lights manually to me in this program is super helpful in creating the look and feel that you want. It gives a little flexibility. Yes, it does add a little bit of time. So just know, and the same exists in the Lumion front as well. You can try your best to make a material a light and intensify it, which I'll show you. But the reality is what you're going to be doing in this program is you're going to be placing lights. Even if they're already in your Revit model, you're going to be placing a light a light source, so to speak. Okay, so first step is going to be placing light sources. Actually, before that, we want to make sure we set the time of day correctly. Then we're going to be placing light sources. I'm going to show you a couple cool little techniques with placing light sources in Twinmotion. And then it just comes down to settings like exposures and lighting and figuring out what you want and how moody you want the scene to be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into the scene. And remember, this is live, so I want you guys to ask questions as we go along. I encourage it, as a matter of fact. So let me just show you what we have here. If I go down to images, I'll just show some of the sample images that I've got going on. Oh my goodness, what is that? So I'm going to show you the very first tip when it comes to Twinmotion and night scenes. Some of you may have this happen. And I don't know if it's because it's an FBX or if it's generally because of what I'll show you in a second. But I remember the very first time I tried to make a night scene in Twinmotion, this is what I did. Ready? I went to my, let me get out of here. I went to where I want to take the picture. So I was like, oh, sweet, here we go. Let me take a picture. Boom, there's my picture. And I said, all right, I'm going to go to more. I'm going to go to location, and I'm going to change my time of day. I'm going to change it to 2 a.m. So I'm just typing 2 a.m. And then you're like, oh, cool. Wait. What's happening? What's happening? All of a sudden, your house is exploding. You're like, what is this? All right. So it took me a little while to figure this out, but as you can see, when you start looking at this scene, you start realizing, well, I'm seeing this weird exploded material, but if I zoom out a little bit, it's kind of got some shapes to it. So then it made me realize that the reason it's doing this, and if you ran into this error and you couldn't figure it out, hopefully this will help you. But if not, when you do run into the error, what this is this is some weird error with the reflection boxes. Okay. So if you look, there's these boxes, and I showed this, I think, in one of my previous sessions, but we have these things called reflection boxes. If I click right here, you can see there's a reflection box there. And so what you can do is you can either click update here, or, which is bizarre because it's supposed to be automatically updating, or I found out that if you just go into your browser, and let me just collapse all real quick. And you turn off the reflection boxes and then turn them back on, it goes away. So if you've ever run into at least that piece that I was just showing you, which is the exploded weird looking thing, then that's your key there, is actually these silly reflection boxes. So again, if you've run into this is what I want to show you. So if I'm in a scene and I have a brand new scene and I make it a dark scene, so I make it like 2 a.m. or something, that's the first thing that's going to happen, is it's going to do this weird explosion thing. So don't be wary. It's actually just your reflection boxes. If you didn't have reflection boxes in your scene, well then you probably wouldn't have had that happen. So good for you. Although I encourage you to use reflection boxes, because for those of you who don't know what they do, if I'm looking at this glass here, see where this dude is walking around? If I turn off reflection boxes, I guess that's a bad one. Yeah, if you look at not the glass, if you look at the windows, so look at these windows over here, and then look at the big windows over here. If I turn off reflection boxes, see that? How they're not reflecting the trees and the environment? If I turn them on, they're reflecting the trees and the environment. So what they do is they tell Twinmotion, I want these surfaces, if there's reflective surfaces here, I want them to actually reflect what's behind them, as opposed to the world or something that the software puts in there. Okay, so first things first. When you're making a night scene, if you have that exploded crazy nuclear blast on your scene, it's probably because your reflection boxes need to be updated. Or what I was trying to show you, which I accidentally turned everything off, is if you just turn off reflection boxes and turn them back on, it'll actually fix that for you, because it just automatically updates them. Either way, somehow you need to update or refresh your reflection boxes. All right, perfect. So let's go back to one of these day scenes for now. And actually, let me go to the night scene and show you what the difference is here. So I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to delete these guys. Delete this guy. All right, so I'm going to set up a new image, and maybe I want to pull in the playground a little bit here and go with a little bit lower of a view. So maybe this is my view. So I'm going to click create image. Okay. The first thing that I tell everyone who I teach Twinmotion to is that what you see is a lot of times what you get. So you want to get your lighting and your visibility and your visual settings to something that you're happy with before you make your camera, because then you don't have to do as much tweaking. You're going to be able to tweak every camera differently if you want to add saturation, if you want to add exposure, etc. But the reality is, if you get closer to what you need when you're creating the actual camera, there's less work that you have to do. So I'm pretty happy with this lighting, other than maybe the perspective, because I might want to turn on a different perspective. But so what I would normally do is I'd go in here, go to more, go to location, and I'm just going to change the time of day to 2 a.m. By the way, anyone who's followed me over the years knows that for some reason 2 a.m. is just my nighttime scene time. And here we go. Here's the exploded reflections. Woo! Hello. So again, what you can do is you can turn off. So I have a container here for all my reflection planes. If I turn those off and turn them back on, you'll see they're fine. If you want, you can click each one individually and turn them on and refresh them or update them, but that's okay. So this is what you get initially. Okay. As you can see, it's pretty dark. So you have a couple options. You can either crank up the exposure, which is going to look kind of weird, but you also want to, you're going to need some lighting, right? You can see there's only one light happening, and it's hard to tell actually. Let me just make sure you see it. If I zoom around here, there's only one light, and it's this one up here, which is the driveway light, and that's the only light that's happening in this image. So it's going to be kind of hard. You don't want to start playing with your exposure until you have all your artificial lighting on. So let me just show you quickly what the artificial lights look like, and then I'll talk about how to turn them on and off, or how to create them and which ones you should use, and some tips and tricks. If I turn on the lighting, you could see, there we go. I've got some artificial lighting that I've placed in there. And then from here, what I would do is now I would adjust exposures and all the other stuff, which we'll run into. So what I want to do for now is I actually just want to run through adding some of these lights and explaining the different types I use and why, and some really cool tricks about them. So real quick, I'm going to create a new container, and I'm going to call them live lights. And I'm going to activate that container. So everything I'm placing is happening in that container. All right. So now there's a couple of things you can do. I suggest working in your medium mode, unless it doesn't make sense for you. It's going to be a little dark for you guys, so I'm not going to work in medium mode. I'm going to work outside of it. Doesn't really make a difference. The only thing is, now that we're outside of medium mode, I want to get my lighting a little darker, or I'm going to place my lights and have to flip back and forth between medium mode or not. So completely up to you. I'm going to leave it like this for the sake of you guys seeing it easier. The first thing I wanted to mention is that there are light fixtures in this project. Okay, if I zoom in a little bit, you could see there's my light fixtures. Oh man, that material looks so nice of that wood, doesn't it? Although this glass is kind of funky. I'm not a huge fan of that color. Why is it blue? Should not be blue. By the way, I just pressed T on my keyboard. That's what allowed me to get to this the material setting. So if you'll notice, this light fixture, let me try and get underneath here for you. If I click it, you can see there's a light bulb material right here. Okay, so in some programs, what you can do, dude on the phone at 2 a.m. Yes, a good point, Aaron. I didn't change any of the folks in the scene, so I have. Remember, this is my house, so I guess that's me, and then my wife and my son. And so yes, at 2 a.m. we're all outside having a good time. Very good point, Aaron at Parallax Team. All right, so what I wanted to say is the light bulb. In some programs, what you can do is you can use a light on material and actually get some significant light for your scene out of it. And so you can do a little bit of that here. If I wanted to, I can take this light bulb material that I have. Oops, let me move down here. And actually, I need to turn off the glass because I can't get to it. So I have one. It's called Neon 02. So in Twinmotion, there are neons. They're called. Okay, so there's neons, and these are essentially lights. So you have different colors you could do with them. You could whatever. So I placed the Neon 2, and you could see what you could do is you can crank up the glow. Actually, my face is in the way, isn't it? Let me shrink my face, or you know what? Let me get rid of my face for a second. So you can crank up or down the glow, and you could change the scale, which doesn't really do much. If you go under settings, there's other things you can do, and you could change the color. But really, all you can do is crank up the glow, to 100%. So if I go back to that night scene now, and now I have the glass off, so you're seeing it here and there. If I go back to my night scene, you could see, if I zoom in, the auto exposure is really kicking it right now. If I zoom into it, you can see it's glowing. I mean, it's doing something, but not really much, right? Let me try and get a better view. So as you can see, it's creating it, but the reality is with Twinmotion, you're not really going to get to light a scene with the neon lights, with just creating a light source is kind of what I'm getting at. So instead, what you need to do is place lights. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to place a couple lights, and then we're going to run through some of the settings, and I'm going to show you a couple other things with those place lights. So let me just turn on. Let me just make sure, yeah, live lights is there. Quit media. So what I'm going to do is first, oops, my glass is off. Let me turn my glass back on. Much better. Much better. Okay. So if I go under my library and I back up here and I go to lights, you can see Twinmotion has a whole bunch of lights you can use. IES, different IES things, all kinds of weird stuff. We're going to just focus on spotlights, omnidirectional lights, and area lights. Okay. So this one here, I'm going to use a spotlight. So I'm just going to click spotlight. Remember, I'm activated under light. And then, you can place it wherever for now. We can fix it after the fact. So I'm just going to place it at the bottom of this light. And you can see, if I zoom out a little bit, hopefully you guys can see this, you can see what it's doing, right? It's a light source and it's doing, that. And then on the bottom, you can see we have a whole bunch of settings. We have lights on, we have the intensity, the color, the angle, the attenuation, blah, 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 blah. So part of the reason why I was saying working between build mode and the camera can be a little funky is you'd have to just make your build mode a night scene, which could be a little too dark for you right now as I'm explaining it. So I'm just going to kind of flip between. So I placed the light here. It's a spotlight. Now I'm going to jump into my night scene. And I'm going to let it auto update the exposure. A little trick too is if you want now with, you can see it's freaking out. The one thing that Twinmotion 2020 added is you can turn off auto exposure. So one of the things I would suggest is turning that off so it doesn't do what you just saw happen. So under lighting, you can go to exposure more and you could turn off auto exposure. And then I'm just going to crank it up to a little bit higher for now. There we go. So I'm going to crank it up just to about, I'm at 11. We can adjust that later, but so now you can see, here's my light. If I zoom in, ta-da, we've got ourselves a light. So now it's a light source. It's a spotlight. Oh, sorry, I just see Muhammad just asked a question. When importing in Twinmotion, I get to use the material from scene or use materials from source, but I don't see any difference when importing both. Muhammad, I think you're talking about if you already have something in the scene and it's the same material. Yeah, I'm not really sure what you're asking there. Sorry, buddy. But I think what you're saying is if you're importing and you already have a material in your scene, is it it's asking you, do you want to keep or whatnot the materials? And I'm not really sure. So that has a lot to do with how you apply materials. If you check out that mini course that I have on Twinmotion, again at the Twinmotion Kit, I think I talked about it a little bit, but it's how you're applying the materials. There's replace versus apply. So take a look at that. All right, so if I click the spotlight, you can see I have some options. I can crank up the intensity a whole bunch. I can crank up the attenuation, which you can see is going to be sort of the distance. The angle, which is kind of cool, so I can flare it out. I can move it in. I can turn on shadows. So what this does, pretty neat. So if I'm looking here, you'll see right now it's just kind of lighting everything. Oh, there we go. Right now it's just kind of lighting everything. So it's actually not blocked by the building. But if you turn on shadows, you can see now the building is actually blocking the light. So for the most part, you're probably always going to want shadows on in Revit. It's when you're doing what I'm doing here. And then you have temperature, your typical lighting controls, and intensity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it kind of like this for now, and we'll adjust the intensity a little bit later. Actually, that might be a little much for the attenuation here. And then we'll talk about haze later, but haze, as you can see, is pretty freaking wild. You can actually do a haze within the light. So we're gonna mess with those once we're done placing lights. Okay, so place the spotlight here, perfect. I'm okay with that for now. I know it's a little bright, but we'll adjust that later. So then we're gonna talk about interior. So if I go in here, oh, this is my Enscape people. I forgot to turn them off when I exported. So if I go in here, you'll notice this scene is obviously just set up for exterior right now. This is an exterior scene. It's an exterior export. I wasn't planning on doing anything interior with it. So you have a couple options. You could use a bunch of spotlights if you have downlights. You could use a dome light. The area light I really like, and it's something they added I think recently, so you can put it in front of like windows as daylight. But I actually like the way it fills the space and then sort of explodes out into the scene for these night scenes. So that's what we're going to place here. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to area light. And you'll notice, see this thing, it's kind of looking around and it's placing. So I'm just going to place it somewhere around here for now. And if I click it, you'll see it's actually just this big plane. So I'm going to place it kind of in the middle. And then I can adjust the length and the width. So if I pull this in, hopefully you guys can see the line there. There's two lines there. I don't know why this is in meters. I must have reset it or something. That's going to drive me nuts. Sorry, let me go to preferences and change that. Inches. 1.6 feet. And then the width of this room is roughly 14 feet, so I'm going to go with 12 for now. Maybe I'll go a little less. Let's go with 10. All right. So now, and if you had a fixture here, obviously you'd light it up with a fixture. I didn't export the fixture for this, but that's okay for now. So I'm kind of placing this area light, you know, in the space. But what's really cool about it, if I turn off the spotlight and I just turn on the area light, you could see how nicely it's glowing the inside. It's just this really, really, really soft, smooth way of filling a room. And so with that, I'm going to crank up the intensity a little bit. I'm going to turn on shadows again. Oh, you can't see. I'm going to turn on shadows again because as you can see what's happening, if I don't have shadows on, it's bleeding through the space. If I do, it's not. And then I can crank up the intensity so that it's just blowing out however I need it to blow out, right? Out of the space. So I'm just going to adjust the intensity a little bit. So there we go there. So now I'm going to take the same light. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to move it down. I'm going to copy it. And hopefully it's somewhere that I can grab and you guys can see. Maybe not. Yeah, I copied it wrong. So I just quickly copied this area light now into this room here. And again, we're not worried about interior for now. If you want to do interior and exterior, you have to obviously play with the lights a little differently. But now I've got it inside here. And remember, shadows are on, so see what's happening on the floor. It's doing this really nice exploded shadow outside. Amado asked if there are limits to the number of reflection boxes. I think there are, but I actually haven't hit it yet, so I don't know. So if anyone knows if there's a limit to the number of reflection boxes that you can have in Twinmotion, let me know. But I haven't hit it yet. I've only done a certain number, so I'm not too concerned about it. But if you are someone who is concerned about it, I would suggest trying to do as minimal as possible to get the maximum effect. All right, so we have an area light here, and you know, I can change the intensity, and you can see what it's going to do is it's going to blow out, it's going to blow in, whatever. So you can see we're starting to get some lights, and I know it's a little blown out. That's fine. We're going to adjust the intensity later. I'm just showing you how you can sort of place the lights. So now you have a couple options with the interior. So as you noticed in the other scene that I had there, I actually had a couple of these windows on. Sorry, I'm zooming through here. So what I did for that is I just copied these area lights and placed them in there. If you want, you can do a couple spotlights. You can do some omni lights. Doesn't really matter. I just really like the way the area lights work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place another area light just in this room. And I don't know, Twinmotion folks out there may be like, hey, area lights aren't designed for this. Don't do that, but whatever. All right, so I'm just going to place it in this room. Here it is here. I'm going to place it, you know, somewhere near the ceiling. Change the size of it to just, I don't know, 3 feet by 4 feet. Just so that it's not blowing out. And now you can see here, if I turn this on and off, you can see it's lighting the scene. If I turn on shadows, you can see it's actually lighting it right there. See that? So now we have these nice, you know, little areas of light. All right. When it comes to something where maybe you don't want as directional, but you want to sort of light a space. So if I turn off all of these lights here and I turn on my originals, you'll notice I have an omni light in here. And it's mainly because I didn't want it to be super directional. I didn't want to make a ton of shadows, but I wanted a light in there. So that's where the omni lights come into play. So let's just place a little omni light underneath this guy. Omnidirectional, I should say. I keep calling it omni light. It's an omnidirectional. I'm going to place it right here. I'm going to move it up. Move it up to around here. And then I'm going to turn shadows on. I'm going to leave the intensity where it is for now. And, you know, so you can see what I'm kind of doing here. So I'm just placing these lights. And I'm sort of building my scene. I'm not going to place many more because we're live and I don't want to take a ton of time just placing lights. But I do want to show you a really cool trick with the lights now. Okay, so we have some lights here, but let's just say, so if I go back to my image, right, a couple things that you want to do when it comes to these images is you may want to add a little bit of ambiance, okay? So let's set our exposure, and then I'll show you how to use lights to actually set the ambiance. Pretty sweet. Ali just said he doesn't think there's a limit to the reflection boxes, but it will make your scene heavy. Good point. And that's why I was kind of saying be easy with how many you use, because it will make your model slower. So let me go into this scene. This is my image 9, which is the scene that I just created. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to mess with the lighting a little bit. So a couple things that I like to do. If you really want to make it moody, adding some rain could help. But the problem is the particles and the whatever. But what I would say is if I'm in location or weather right now, if I go to effects, the one thing that I always add quite a bit of is smog for night scenes. Reason being, if I move it up a little bit dramatically, what you'll see is the smog makes the lighting have sort of this volumetric look to it. So don't be afraid of using smog when you're creating a night scene. And then if I go under more, and then for lighting, really the biggest thing is adjusting your exposure correctly. Okay, so thankfully Lumion or Twinmotion gave us the option to turn off auto exposure. And that's key, because as you'll see, once you start adding lights, if I turn on auto exposure and I turn it down a little bit, it's going to be really hard to get a blend between the intensity of your lights and the darkness of the scene. So what I suggest doing is turning off auto exposure, turning off your lights, okay, and then setting your exposure to the absolute brightest / darkest, I guess, the brightest you want your scene to be before turning lights on. So right now I'm at about a 9 for this scene, and hopefully you guys can see it a little bit. I'm going to press G to turn off all those lights just so you can see it a little better. So you can see it's enough to get a sense of what's happening around, but not quite. So I'm going to do like a 9.5 and a 9. Let's do 9.75 or 10. I'll do 10. So we're going to stay with 10. Scour just asked, can you create your own skyboxes? Yes, you can. You can create your own skyboxes. You can find them and import them, and they are helpful for sure. I'm not going to go into that in today's session. So auto exposure is off. I'm going to turn my lights back on, and the one thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the intensity of the lights a little bit just to get what I need for this scene. Okay, so I'm clicking through each light, and I'm going to turn up or down the intensity till it's just give me what I need for this scene. So a little bit there, the area light. Maybe I'll turn this one up a little bit. Shadows on. And then my omnidirectional light. This thing is really bright for some reason. I'm going to turn that to, let's do 5, 10. Let's do 15, 20. All right, I like 20. Okay, perfect. So now this is where I like to add a little flair. So what I'm going to do is, I'm starting to like the scene a little bit. Hopefully it's not too dark for you guys to see. But there may be some things, like maybe in the background over here, I want to have a little bit of like a bluish haze. Okay, this is where the stylistic things come into play. All right, so if I go back here, maybe in the background there must be a bluish haze. And then I also want to have sort of this moody feel to the whole scene. So what you can do is you can actually use, if I go over here, you can use lights to create volumetric fog in just locations, right? So if I say omnidirectional light, I'm going to place it right over here. I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm going to make the radius of it larger. I don't even know where the end of it is. Oh, very large. So you can see there's the radius there. If I turn this down a little bit. Okay, so I know it looks a little weird right now, but what this is, right, this is a light sort of floating in there. But what you can do is you can actually turn on haze, as you can see here, and then you can turn the intensity of the light down. And now you just have a basically fog element, okay? So if I go under more, I'm hiding for you guys. All right, I just turned on haze over here. If I go under more, I can turn on the intensity of the haze separate from the rest of the light. So they made haze just a little bit different than the rest of it. So you'll notice, even though it's off the intensity of the light, it's actually producing a little bit of a light. And let me turn it on and off so you can see. right? So look in the back corner here. If I turn it on, see that? It's creating this nice little haze. So I do the same thing. So that's creating sort of a background haze in the corner here. But you can do the same thing to make sort of like a moonlight glow behind you if you want. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So if I take this Omni light and I pull it behind my camera, I'm going to make a copy of it. I just held shift there. And I know this, some of you may be looking at this like why are you spending all this time building these lights and stuff? But the reality is, if you've ever done night scenes especially, having the artistic freedom to do some of the stuff that I'm doing right now is actually kind of nice. It's stuff where you would have to place lights and do some weird workarounds if you were doing this, let's say even like a native Revit rendering. And so I personally like the fact that you have it, the freedom to do it. So let me jump back to my image now. So what I did is I put an Omni light behind me, and it's producing a little bit of haze. So if I turn it on and off, you can see it's kind of making a bloom across the whole scene. But I'm going to change the settings on that light. So I'm just going to click that light. And I could do things like, if I wanted to, I could even add a little intensity to the lighting. Okay. And change the color maybe to something cooler. So it's bluish behind me. And then maybe I want to turn the intensity down a little bit, because that's a little much. Let's do 1000. And then I might want to turn the haze down a little bit. Let's do 0.5%. 1%. That might be too much. So I think you get what I'm doing here, though. I want to turn this on and off so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so now, and hopefully this comes through in the live stream. I know it's a little dark. I mean, it is a night scene, but it is what it is. So let me go back to so let me go back to this scene here. So as you can see, if I turn off, I'm going to turn off some of these lights individually. So if you take a look at on the right hand side of the screen here, and then in the foreground, if I turn the haze on or the light on, you'll notice it's actually creating almost like a moonlit glow behind me, but it's also filling in the space a little bit. On the right hand side, if I turn the haze off and haze on, hopefully you can see what that does. All right, now if I turn off the area lights and the spotlight, you can see what we're doing is we're just sort of building this scene however we want to build it. So as you can see, as we're going on, it's creating a little bit more moodiness to it, but it's also creating a little more realism. And then it just comes down to the settings. So what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm just going to walk through some of my settings. I think what I'll do is on the blog post tomorrow, I will post a snip of the actual light settings that I'm using here if you like them. Ali asked if my quality is set to ultra. My quality is set to ultra. If you don't believe me, I'll go over to preferences, quality, ultra. Okay, so let me turn off G here. The only thing I might do now is I may tweak a couple lighting things. So I'm gonna turn my face off so you guys can see. I'm gonna go right back to lighting. Under settings, the other thing you could do to help a little bit with these night scenes is you could turn up or down the ambient light, and that does help sort of fill in some of the darker shadows, so to speak. The moon intensity is something that you might want to just leave alone, but obviously at night it's going to give you a brighter sky, so you can mess with that. But I sometimes to me it gives us a little bit too bright of a light setting. All right, so let me just walk really quickly through my settings here because I'm sure everyone's interested. So location, you saw that. If I go into location, time of day is set to 2 a.m. It's May. It's the north offset. Doesn't really matter there. If I go under weather, I almost always have a little bit of cloudiness on if I'm not using a skybox. And so you can see in here, I'm slid, a quarter of a way up. If I look at the season, it used to be that you had a nice little slider where trees would start to turn a little bit yellow as you're going through, but now it just kind of automatically turns yellow, and I don't really like it. There's not a subtlety to it, so I'm not really using too much of that. And then if I go under effects, you can see I have smog turned on, and then the wind speed are exactly what they are. So let me go back now. Let's go into lighting. Raj just asked, can I show the work of depth of field? Yes, I'll show you in 1 second. As I showed you, exposure is set to 10, and that's, we saw how you went through that. And under more is where you can turn off the auto exposure. White balance depends on your scene and what you're looking for. These kind of scenes, I may want a little warmer. I may want them a little lighter. It doesn't really, this is where it comes down to really preference, so to speak. So you can see, I think I was in like the 80 something hundreds. Global illuminations on. If I go under more, I have my GI set to 0.85. I have my distance set to whatever my distance needs to be for the scene. If I go under shadow, for those of you that don't know, the way Twinmotion works with shadow is beyond a certain distance, you can make shadows disappear, and it's a performance thing. So usually what you want is you want the shadow distance to be far enough to get all the shadows in your scene, but not too far where it's blowing up, but you want the detail. So that's going to be a very scene specific thing. My suggestion is you start at 0, and if I roll back, you might be able to see it. And then you slide the shadows until everything in your scene looks as crisp and detailed and shadowy as you want. I think I was at 2250. And then if I go under settings, just running through some of these, most of these are default. The only thing I mess with is ambient. So that's lighting. Now if I go into camera, my field of view, completely up to you guys on your scene and how you set them up. I'm usually in the 80s to 60s depending on the scene. If I'm far away or like an aerial scene, I might go to like a 20 or 30. But you're just moving your camera, and if you're a photographer, you might know kind of where that comes into play. Depth of field. I usually do have some sort of depth of field on for still images like this. So I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to go to more just to show you how it works. And I'm going to click this little target. Once I click the target, I'm going to click it on my object or my building. And that's telling Twinmotion I want depth of field to be set at 58 feet. Ta-da! Okay. And the reality is, if you want to start messing with aperture and all of this stuff, that will help with some of the lighting. But I'm usually just leaving these alone. And you can see now the grass is nice and blurred out, and the trees in the background are also blurred out. So that's kind of a nice feel. Vignetting, I usually like a little vignetting on my scenes. That's just me, so I'm at like the 40%. Lens flare, same thing. If you want, that's a stylistic thing. If you want to add some lens flare, go to it. But then if I go to visual effects, I've got color, filters, clay, and reflections. Color gradient, I'm a high contrast, low saturation kind of guy. So you can see my contrast is at 60. My saturation is at 30. And then I usually don't use a ton of filters, but there's a really nice look, and I'll give my buddy Dan, who I work with, credit for this, is he's been using Fuji as his starting filter, and it is a really nice look and feel, and it even works in these night scenes. So, but you do have to be ready for a little bit of a change in contrast for that. And then last but not least, and I explain this in any of my other sessions, I do like to use line light for these visual effects. And what that does is it just adds a little hint of edging to all of the objects in your scene. All right, and then let me just make sure I didn't miss anything on the visual effects. And then reflections, I obviously have SSR reflections on. Format, obviously depending on the size you want. Let's go with 4K for fun. If you want, you can do a custom format. Let me go back, all the way back. All right. So there we have it. So now rendering the scene. Oop, I think I just reset those settings on myself. No, I didn't. Oh, I reset the lighting settings. My bad. All right. Here we go. So, I mean, for the actual rendering, if you've seen any of my Twinmotion stuff, pretty simple. You just go down here. You click into your image that you want. Let's say it's image 9 for now. If you want to turn on max lighting, if you want to turn on refinement, etc., and then you just click start export, you're good to go. So let me take some questions here while that renders. Cool tip about the haze in combination with other lights making the moonlight. Oh, you know what? Let me stop rendering. I think it's freaking out my camera on you guys. There it goes. Sorry if I'm glitching right now. The haze in combination with other lights make moonlight or incoming sun rays. Yes, you can, if you wanted to, you can make rays out of those haze lights, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to cancel Twinmotion in the background so I can show you guys that. I see you make the intensity in thousands and it's beautiful. I set the intensity in my rendering at 300 and it's so bright. Do you know why? Intensity, are you talking about the light intensity? Or are you talking about the scene intensity? Let me know, Ali. Raj is asking, what does the lens flare really do? I don't see a major difference when I use it. I'm sorry that I'm skipping so much on you guys. I probably should not have rendered while using a 4K camera to stream to you guys. Does snow affect the light brightness? Let's find out. I actually don't know. I'm assuming it does. It does a little bit as far as the exposure is concerned. So back to Raj's question about lens flare. Lens flare is it's going to work. YouTube is freaking out on me. Sorry guys, just give me 1 second. I should not have rendered 4K on my laptop while streaming a 4K video to YouTube for you guys. So I'm just going to try and stop Twinmotion while it's in its tracks. Okay, I should be back and good to go. Oh man. Note to self, everyone. Okay, hopefully you guys can still see me and hear me right now. Let me know real quickly in the chat if you can. Scoured was asking about the snow affects the light, and so what I'll do is I'll open Twinmotion again and just test that out, but I don't think it does. And Ali's asking about the light intensity. If you notice, the process that I was setting out to you guys was setting your scene by your light brightness by your scene. So what you wanted to do, if you remember when I was walking through the process, is you want to set up your scene, turn all the lights off, and then set your exposure. Okay, get it to where you want it to be. Imagine if there's no lights there. And then turn your lights on, and then set the intensity of your lights, based on that. Otherwise, what's happening is, especially if you have auto exposure on, what's happening is crap's just gonna blow up. It's gonna overexpose. It's gonna, you're trying to readjust those settings, so that it makes sense for your scene. So what I'm gonna do real quickly is just take a peek at the snow stuff. Any other questions, you guys? This is pretty awesome. I really appreciate you joining me today. Hopefully this was helpful for you, just to run through my working mind of figuring this stuff out, giving you some tips on how to get to a certain point in night renderings. And I hope you can take this and develop your own night scenes, figure out your own styles, use some of these tips to get it to where you need it to be. So real quick, since I am back in action now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quickly turn on snow because I want to. It's gonna be kind of fun. There's my blow up. Remember, we have to turn off the reflections and turn them back on. As you can see, this scene, I believe this exact scene that I was messing with, it has auto exposure, and so you can see the difference there. Let me get this to deep down. Mohammed has a question about the material. Mohammed, we'll have to shelf the material questions. Maybe I'll do a session later on about materials. There's a lot of things when it comes to Twinmotion materials. Okay, so real quickly, just for fun, I'm going to turn on snow and see what happens. First, let me just check to see if my exposure is Okay, auto exposure's off, which it should be. I'm going to go to weather. I'm going to crank on some snow. And let's turn on some particles too. There we go. Why not? All right, as you can see, it definitely made the scene brighter. I mean, and technically as it should, right? The reality is when it's snowing out and there's white everywhere, it's going to be a little brighter. So then you could adjust the exposure, relative to that if you want. But it wasn't too bad. So there we go. We have ourselves a beautiful. I'm not going to render it, unfortunately. I'll pull up one of the other renderings so you guys can see. I was going to render it and open it, but it is what it is. So here's the final rendering when I was testing, for you guys to see. This is the raw rendering coming out of Twinmotion. So you can see it's got a nice feel. It's got a nice look. You can see the ambient fog in the right-hand side. You can see some of my lighting on the left-hand side. You can see the light happening on the inside, some reflections. And all of this was created just using, those techniques I just showed you. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. And, start with exposure, add your lights, adjust your lights, start playing with some fog and some other things, and then it just comes down to making the scene the way you want it to be. The coolest thing about this is the videos. If you want to make a video, it is what it is, right? You get what you see. It's a real-time rendering program. All right, so that's what I got. Hopefully that's helpful. Thank you guys for joining me this week. I'll see you next week. Have a lovely Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate. I know this was a Tuesday, and I know it was a little different. The other thing I did want to mention, since you stuck around, is I do have a webinar, a free webinar on Enscape this afternoon, actually. So if you want to join that, I will post a link to it right now in the chat, and I'll see you over there. I'll be talking about virtual reality and Enscape and some really, really cool stuff that I've done in the past with both virtual reality and Enscape. So let me just post this link for you guys, and then anyone else, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at the Revit Kid on Twitter. And that's about that. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. You're all amazing. Thank you again to Bimbox for sponsoring this. Be sure to check them out at Bimbox USA. And yeah, you guys are amazing. Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.